clear up some information for you. So without further ado,
The Branciforte Fire Department is under the Scotts Valley for the last 6 years, and the contract is up to the new, and LAFCO is an administrative agency. Local agency formation committee. Yes.
Good evening. This is me, Pat O'Connell. It's really nice to see all you folks out here, and it's even nicer to see a lot of people that I recognize from over the years.
Smiling face too.
All right, thanks. Yeah, well, yeah, I did that. Well, anyway. Yeah. So, no, it is good to good to be here, and I'm glad to see a lot of people here interested in what is going on at Branciforte Fire. So I just quickly, 23 years ago, became a volunteer, and then over the years I became the fire chief for 12 years, among other things. And so during that time I got to know a lot of the folks in the community. And it's really great to be a part of this community. So again, thank you for showing up. But there was a couple things I wanted to clarify, because I see some stuff being posted, and people have asked me some questions. And one of the things is I think there's some confusion, and it's about EMTs and paramedics, and I think there's some folks that are confused what the difference is. And all the firefighters, all the volunteers are EMTs at Branciforte Fire. And what an EMT is, an emergency medical technician, and they have skills that they can perform. And they now have skills that are EMT 2, which include a King tube, which is a device that if you're not able to breathe, it might be able to open your airway. And so they can do CPR, they do a lot of stuff. Go to an accident, they can help you get bandaged up and do a lot of things. What they are not here are paramedics, and paramedics give out drugs and do skills that the EMTs can't perform. But for basic life-saving functions, the EMTs can do a lot of things in a short period of time. So I just wanted to make sure that there's no confusion about that, because it was posted that we have no EMTs. Well, they're all EMTs. And if you need CPR, they're going to perform CPR on you. So we just need to move beyond that. So the Branciforte Fire District was established in 1950. The chief at the time was Gino DeLucchi. Gino DeLucchi lived right next door to where the fire station is now. They ran the station. Him and his wife basically made phone trees, calls to the volunteers when they were needed. The very first building for the fire district there was that metal shed across the street from their house. So a long history, but from what they started was a group of volunteers in this area that could respond to the calls. Before that, there was a long way for any other apparatus or any engines to get to the district. So that's where it began. It was primarily volunteers, well, it was only volunteers for quite a long time. When I started in 23 years ago, all of the other volunteers were all local folks. So this was all done locally. It was all done in our district. but things started to change. There's fewer people that were signing up to become volunteers in our district. The requirements are harder. You had to be pretty dedicated to go through all the requirements that a firefighter needs to have. So, and the makeup of the district had changed over that time. So, we started to get volunteers from out of the area, and this turned out to be actually a good thing in the long run. Is that we got a lot of people who were wanting to get a job in the fire service. They would come and become a volunteer in our district, and mostly they didn't live too far, but some of them came quite a ways. So we worked out deals for where they have them cover the station, and at one point we were having 28 to 32 volunteers in our district, and we were able to have 2 people on duty at all times, an officer and a volunteer, and usually we had more. But then another change started to occur over the past maybe 6 years or something like that period, and it started to get harder to get volunteers. And it's something that's hard everywhere now. Every fire department is having difficulty finding volunteers that use volunteers. And it's a little harder to find people to even go into the fire service as much as they used to. But it's still a problem finding paid call volunteers, and all of the fire departments, including CAL FIRE. So, anyhow, that's just a little history of how we are at where we're at now. We're have about 12 volunteers, I think, and there's the 3 paid staff. So there's 1 on duty at all times. So there's always somebody there for 24 hours a day. There's always somebody there to answer the call. Now we're at this point where we had a financial crisis a few years back, and before I retired, we worked out an agreement with Scotts Valley to perform administrative duties. That agreement was supposed to be for 18 months to 2 years. It's now been 6 years, and they're still doing it. They let us know that they want to quit the agreement, and the last day would be September 30th. So this is a hard time for us to figure out what we need to do to continue to provide the service that we want to for the folks that live here. And so we looked at our options at that time, and one of the first options was to talk to CAL FIRE to see, do they want to take over the agreement, or is there a way to work like they do some of the other fire districts in the county, like Pajaro Valley. They have an agreement, and so that looked like it could be a good option. Maybe there's a way we could work something out. Maybe there's some flexibilities. But as they went higher up into the chain within the state, then it turned out it was going to be harder than either the chief here in our county expected or we expected. Their rules have changed. Some of the other things have changed, but basically, when they looked at our budget and saw how much we actually had to be able to work something out with them, is that we didn't have enough money to do it. If we were to do what Pajaro Valley does, which is have it run by a battalion chief or run through there, by a battalion chief from CAL FIRE. They used that as the basis for what they charge. And that was $280,000 a year that they would pay to CAL FIRE for that chance. But what they also require now is a change. It changed from, they used to be able to staff a two-person engine company or two-persons engine company at the station. But the labor agreement this year has changed to they have to have 3 people. So not only would we have to come up with $280,000 for the oversight, is that we would have to staff it with 3 people. What it costs to staff our station with just the 3 people that we have takes up 90% of our revenue. So with just 3 people, that cans out full ass. So the revenue that the fire district brings in a year, this year is $908,485. So the salaries and benefits all put together come out to $822,133. Good, I got that right finally. So that really does work out to 90% of the revenue. That's a high number. Part of the issue was we've had a retirement on a disability that now costs for our workers' comp. It went up a huge amount. So I think we're paying $173,000 something, 135. Yeah. So it's a lot of costs, and that doesn't leave much left over for hiring extra people. So I've heard people want to see more folks on the engines in different issues, but what we've done over the years is we've done really the best we can with the money that we have. And the districts has been very supportive of that. And we I think, always had a lot of support for different things, the fundraisers, the pancake breakfasts, but that's not enough to add another 6 people to the fire station on pay to be able to do that. So I think being a volunteer-based agency, I think there's still some ways to maybe work that out. But what we have to do now is after we found out that CAL FIRE wasn't going to work out, we started working on other options for our own district to become our district again, run by ourselves. And one of those was the idea that we would promote one of the captains to an interim fire chief position. We would bring in a person to help run the administrative functions, like basically the general manager keeps track of all the finances and all that other stuff, that paperwork that needs to be done. And that would be a part-time position. So we were trying to find the right persons to do these things. We're working on these things and getting closer to coming up with a solution to that. But in the meantime, our friend here, Joe Serrano, came and talked to Chief Whittle and us, and he had an idea about what we could do. One of the things that we have always thought about was could the district merge with another district? And Scotts Valley over the years was one of those districts that there was off and on discussions for a long time over the years. During these past 6 years, there was a couple times where the 2 boards met to see if there was anything possible about merging, and that was not something that the Scotts Valley Board wanted to do. They were willing to keep the agreement going, but they weren't willing to go forward with the merger effort. The last time that Scotts Valley actually offered to merge with Branciforte would have been over 24 years ago, before I started. At that time, they said, why don't we merge at that time, but your captains over there would have to start at firefighters at here. And they made a decision that the staff didn't want to be firefighters, as they were already captains. I think that was one of the really bad decisions that were made. But there's been discussions about countywide mergers at different times in between that. And one time there was discussions that would have included 9 different agencies merging. Having gone to a lot of those meetings, it was pretty interesting. But it's very hard to get fire districts to merge. It's a lot of work. It's not easy. It takes time. Central and Aptos have merged this past year, and they're still having some difficulty getting things done. So we did touch base with Central to see if they were interested in a merger. The benefits of a merger would be that we would be able to function still as Branciforte. The district, the station would still be able to function as a station. It would be staffed. At no time during these merger talks have we talked about not staffing in the station here. I mean, it doesn't make sense to necessarily close our station down and lose that response from right in our own district. So that hasn't been appealing. But during those times when those 9 agencies were talking, Branciforte would have been a desirable spot because it was in between the districts. There's some equipment you can put there. There's reasons that you could do it. Maybe we could keep a lot of volunteers there. All these different things were being thought of at the time. But unfortunately, that didn't occur either. So here we are, and LAFCO has suggested that we do what is called an extraterritorial service agreement. What that would mean is that Scotts Valley would come in and respond to all of our calls, and the first thing that he said was that Branciforte Fire District would disband, and there would be no career firefighters staffing our station. There might be some volunteers there, but no career firefighters. So that sounded like, that doesn't sound right to me. After 71 years of being a district and doing the best thing we could for our community, it doesn't sound right to abandon a station or leave the station there with a nameplate on it, but nobody inside. So there was some more discussion, and maybe there's some other ways we can do that. And maybe there's some other ways that we can work with Scotts Valley in the long run. But this was something that he asked us to sign, and it would be a start in the 30th of September. And there was a requirement that Scotts Valley would have to come up with the plan as far as how everything would work out, and the merger would be done in a year. Anyway, you can explain it maybe differently, but from my viewpoint, this is not what I would like. I couldn't recommend it to all of you here. I couldn't recommend it to the rest of our board. What I would like to recommend is that we keep trying to do what we were thinking, which I think is what we're close to being able to do, is to get that promotion for the officer inside the station, to get some help with some administrative help. That maybe we only need that help for a year, maybe 2 years, but something that will make that part of it, and mentor our officer or our chief to be able to perform those things in the long run. But we still have issues. We have a lack of volunteers, and we need to solve that. And in having some discussions among ourselves, there are some avenues that we can reach out to, I think, and work harder at getting some people interested in the long run. But it'll take some time. We'd love to be able to find a bunch of folks that live in the district that want to become firefighters, but like I said, that's a hard thing to pull off. So here we are, and I'm the next board meeting, I think we'll have a special one. We'll talk about these issues. We'll talk about doing those things, and go from there. And hopefully that'll give us some time to not rush out right now and make some switch that doesn't feel right, to give us some time to make a switch if it happens that works with Scotts Valley or Central or somebody, because I think a merger probably is going to have to happen at some time, because financially, for us to be a complete district on our own with 3 firefighters on duty at all time, we would have to triple our revenues, at least double or triple our revenues. And that we have 700 homes here that are paying into our tax system. That would, you all know what you're paying now, and I think that it's not unreasonable what we're paying now, but I don't think it wouldn't feel comfortable tripling that number or more.
Have you done any polling to find out whether property owners would be interested in paying more?
So that's one of the other things that we can do, and it's something that we will look at doing. One of the board members has suggested that we start that just as soon, but we need to come up with the answers about what we're going to do next, and that's on the list of things to do.
So, I mean, it sounds like people are paying about $1,500 for fire service.
It just depends.
Well, but on average, right? Across
Because
700 households,
part of it is the property
900,000.
taxes and part of it is the special tax. So,
But I guess, I mean, I'm looking at us, right?
The math is, your math is right.
I mean, we're one way or another.
yeah,
Some are paying more and some are paying less. But $1,500 for fire service in the current economy, I would do a poll.
okay. The last thing I was going to talk about is we need your input, and that's how we're going to try to do it.
Well, I want to say thank you to our firemen and the EMTs and our emergency crew that came out and helped my husband last night. And it speaks to me how much we need our people here who actually will look after our health and our safety. And for me, increasing my taxes, I would go for it. Second,
All of one.
so we got two. Secondly, in this era of climate change and the awareness, I'm glad you're looking to buy time, because would we be looking at possibly increased funding from the feds and the state coming up soonish? I don't know, but it sounds like a good time not to make some radical moves if it's possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you guys looked into grants from FEMA?
No, not recently.
They have some really good grants out there. They're coming up again, I believe, in October, and they're pretty good, and they are for labor a lot of times.
Okay. Well, that's something that we maybe need to talk to you some more about. There was somebody that I was referred to just last night that was saying some of similar things that you are. So that is something we want to.
And also, in terms of volunteers and interns, the CAL FIRE work furlough folks are getting a different chance in the future, and I'm wondering whether that would provide an opportunity to bring on interns who could transition from a work furlough position in CAL FIRE to a full-fledged firefighter.
There still would be some costs involved,
Sure.
and so we certainly have to work that out, but those guys are the ones that work the hardest at
They
all
know
those
how to
fires.
do it. They know how to do
And
it.
I would support them being able to come here.
One other question, in regards to volunteers, can the administrative person be a volunteer?
Could happen.
I'm
So,
sure you've got some great
that-
talent.
That was one of the other things that there was comment from somebody that wanted to volunteer to just answer the phones. And was told, no, but that's not the right answer. The right answer is yeah. We can use volunteers in any way we can.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Hmm? Okay. What were you saying?
I was just saying if, if the collective group was interested in volunteering and setting schedules up between, I would be happy to volunteer.
Yeah, so she's saying that she would be happy to volunteer, and I hear some other folks saying things like that. We need to set up some sort of way to reach out to folks, and that may be part of the polling or questionnaires. We do have a list of everyone's address, and we can send that out. And maybe we can come up with some way to meet and see if there's ways to work some of these things out. It's limited to but if you get creative about it, there's ways to use the help.
Is housing an issue for finding volunteers, and would having more housing locally available to volunteers help?
So it comes to housing. You've all been paying into the Measure T funds, and that was to help build the station addition, which is nearly complete. We could potentially let a volunteer stay there, for example, but we'd have to work out how that works. But we have room for a few folks, but housing is tough. We once had somebody up on Ryder Ridge offer one of their extra units, and he stayed up there, and that was really nice because they were able to respond up at Station 2 and do a lot of things. And so, heck, if somebody wanted to do that up there, I'd sign them up tomorrow.
I was a volunteer that offered to answer the phone. At the time, I had a brand new FFT2 level wildland firefighting certificate. The answer I got that I couldn't answer the phones, and my offer was to go in the station when there's a call and to back up Cruz, therefore, when they're out on a call, and simply answer the phones. But I was told because of liability, I wouldn't be able to do that. And so there's kind of a gap between the reality of it's extremely difficult, apparently, to get volunteers, and kind of the offer that, well, we'll look into it. I don't think we have that much time. We gotta move. We have a fire season upon us. We have a new fire regime upon us. And I came here to hear directly from Joe Serrano about some of the plans that you're talking about. So could you please invite Joe up to give us what he's talking about, and also please invite our fire chief up to give his opinion, if you would, on what we can do on October 30th. I think we're out of time.
Yeah.
And we got to move. So I hate to butt in here, but my expectation is to hear some solid outlines of plans that the residents who are here can hear, and if necessary, put a thumbs up or thumbs down at this point. So could you please ask Joe Serrano to get up and explain to us what his thinking is on restructuring or whatever his plan is in particular.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pat. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Serrano. I'm the Executive Officer of the Local Agency Formation Commission of Santa Cruz County, better known as LAFCO. LAFCO is a state agency that oversees the delivery of municipal services. You may be wondering, well, what the heck does that even mean? In other words, LAFCO identifies the most logical provider of public services. A logical provider meaning a city or a special district, and public services meaning water, sewer, or in this case, fire protection. LAFCO has been around since the 1960s. There is one LAFCO in each county in California. So 58 counties, 58 LAFCOs. So we have local representation on LAFCO, and we create cities, we create special districts. We identify local agencies that will provide you fire protection. So Mr. Pat gave you a great overview of the history of Branciforte. I just want to add to it. So he's right, it was formed in 1950. But what's interesting is that in 1994, LAFCO combined the spheres of influence of Branciforte and Scotts Valley Fire Protection District. What's a sphere of influence? It's a planning tool. It indicates what the future will be for that district. In this case, when you combine a sphere, it means these two districts should become one at some point in the foreseeable future. So that was back in 1994. That sphere is still in place, so it's still indicating you should merge and become one. The economies of scale. You use the existing resources and staff, but power as one. Now, fast forward to 2015, as Mr. Pat mentioned, there was a contract, an agreement in place with the two districts saying Scotts Valley Fire will come in and do your internal operations. They do your financing. They do the admin work. So it was almost like an unofficial merger back in 2015. That contract has been in place for the last 6 years or so. Now there's a sunset date. It's going to go away September 30th of this year. So it's 2 months away from now. That leaves the Branciforte Fire District in an interesting position. It does not have a fire chief. It doesn't have admin. It doesn't have a clerk. It doesn't have a budget manager. It is left as an empty shell. Not the fault of the Branciforte Fire Board or the district itself. It's just that for the last 6 years, it's been unofficially merged with Scotts Valley Fire. But now we're at the point where the contract's going to end. Great question. So it was a temporary fix back in 2015-16 to get Branciforte back on its feet, because back then they were in financial distress. Back then, around 2014-15, they only had $62,000 in the bank. Fast forward to now, it has around, I want to say $600,000 in the bank, because now they're financially healthy. They had someone come in, do the financial performances, had a balanced budget, did the internal operations to ensure that the district was functioning. But that was, again, a temporary fix. But at the same time, it kind of showed that this merger can happen. And it was actually been happening. It's been unofficially merged for the past couple of years, but it was never officially done. So now Scotts Valley Fire is let me backtrack a little bit. Fire districts were formed to provide fire protection to their communities. In this county, we have 11 fire service providers. 2 of them are the cities, the city of Santa Cruz and the city of Watsonville. We have 11 fire districts. One of them is Branciforte, the other is Scotts Valley. We have a number of them surrounding each other. Most of them doing financially well. But back then in 1994, we indicated it makes sense for these 2 to merge. But Scotts Valley Fire is providing the services for Branciforte. We talk about when you call 911, you expect a crew to show up. For Branciforte Fire, it's very interesting. They have 1 person on staff. Scotts Valley Fire has 3. So most of the time when you call 911, you're not looking at the patch. You just want someone to come in and help you, whatever it's a medical call, if it's a fire structure, whatever the case, you just want someone to show up. But you're expecting a crew. So most of the time when people are calling in Branciforte community, it's Scotts Valley Fire that's showing up because they have a 3-person crew. And if it's not Scotts Valley Fire, it might be Central, it might be Boulder Creek. It's the only district in this county where they're having other people outside the jurisdiction providing the services. And in LAFCO's point of view, that's not efficient. That's why the merger makes sense, because Scotts Valley Fire is already providing the services internally and externally. So that's why Mr. Pat was right. LAFCO, state law requires LAFCO to do these reports every 5 years to just check to see the financial health of cities and special districts. What services are they providing? Are they providing it well? Are there areas of improvement? Are there challenges? So we look, because we oversee those entities, we want to make sure that they're providing the best level of services for the communities. And that's the whole purpose. That was the reasons why they were formed. And that's why I'm suggesting in my report that's going to be coming up in the next few months for the 2 districts to really look at this merger, because September 30th is right around the corner and this contract's going to end. So what happens to the community? You have 1 person as a staff member, but who's taking care of the internal aspect? Who's picking up the calls? Who's doing the budget? Who's doing the audits? Who's doing all the internal things? When you look at an organization, yes, you have the CEO, or in this case, a fire chief, but you have all their other assistances. You don't have that case here in Branciforte, especially after September 30th. That goes away. And so now you're in a very tough, challenging position. So that's kind of like an overview of what's going on right now and why LAFCO is getting involved. Mr. Pat suggested an ESA, an extraterritorial service agreement. What is that? That is an agreement that allows a special district to come in and provide emergency services for health and safety issues. This is a temporary fix. This is a precursor to annexation or adding that area into their jurisdiction. I'm proposing, again, this is not going to happen overnight. This is the reason why I wanted to be here, because I want to inform the residents of this idea, of this concept. Scotts Valley Fire has an extraterritorial service agreement indicating that in the next year or 2, this community is officially part of the district. It's already unofficially part of it, but we'll make it official. And that will require additional community workshops to answer your questions, because I'm looking at your faces. I know you have a bunch of questions. And it's kind of a unique situation. A lot of people don't even know what LAFCO is. And I'm coming in here, not a resident to this community. The last thing I want to do is have this kid come in and say, you should do this. That's the farthest from the truth. I just want to be here to help. At the end of the day, I need to determine that you are receiving the most logical, efficient, and effective level of services. This merger, legally, your level of service has to stay the same or improve. You might be wondering, okay, well, how is this going to cost me money? Is my property taxes going to go up? The answer is no. You're already receiving the level of service from Scotts Valley Fire, It doesn't change your property taxes. You're not going to see an increase in your assessments. Based on my initial analysis, you might see some cost savings. But again, additional you need to see the numbers. It needs to make sense to the community. So that's one of the questions. Another question is, well, is the level of service going to change? Because there's talks about closing the fire station. That's something that I'm not recommending. The fire station can be repurposed. It's still going to be there. It still can say Branciforte. We have Scotts Valley Fire already providing the services as is right now. They're coming from their 2 fire stations to provide services to the community. So your level of service is not going to change. In fact, it might improve. I'm sorry?
Can you get us the data?
Yeah, so 2 questions. I heard about data, but yes. So they're already providing services in the community. They have 5 to 10 minute drive time to get here. So it's already been a practice for the last 6 years. And another thing is about data. You're absolutely right, whoever said about data. Well, again, the data, you're absolutely right. The report that I'm developing shows the 5 and 10 minute drive time.
From Scotts Valley?
From the 2 Scotts Valley fire stations that they have, yes.
And they fly?
Okay, well, again, this is why I want to show the report to you, so you can read the facts and determine and see the information.
Who gave you those facts?
Look, could I ask you something?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm way out of the loop here. I would like to know, how did people get on the board? Who is on the board? Who makes the decision about whatever happens on October 30th? Because it seems to me that we're mighty close to that deadline while people are still scratching their heads and wondering what they're going to do. Could you explain the basic structure of how people have gotten on the board, what power they have to make changes, all that stuff? I mean, basically...
Great question. So the Branciforte Fire District is a 5-member board, and only residents within Branciforte Fire can be elected to the board. So the terms for the board members are 4 years. The next elections are not going to happen for 2 seats. There's going to be until 2022, and I believe the other 3, and correct me if I'm wrong, is until 2024. But the residents from Branciforte are the ones who elect the current boards. And then going back to the drive time, yes, what I'm just spitting out facts, but you have nothing to view it. So that's why I want to provide this report to the. No, that's what I'm saying. I just want to provide you the report, and then you can read the analysis. But again, that's LAFCO's. That's the reason why LAFCOs are here, to provide that information for the residents to determine. If the residents don't want to do this merger, it will not happen. It cannot be forced upon you. But it's LAFCO's responsibility to provide you this analysis. If the consensus is we don't approve this, we don't agree, we don't want to move forward, then nothing happens. But the reason why I'm here today is because of this contract that's ending. The last thing I want is for this community to not have the level of service that they're comfortable and are expecting after September 30th.
When we don't, at September 30th, if this expires, what happens with our service? If no decision's been made?
So that's what I'm concerned about. It's the unknown. What happens? Because you still have those 3 employees, but there's only 1 person on the shift. But I don't know what's going to happen with the internal. It's that unknown. That's what concerns me, because I don't know what's going to happen after September 30th. You can rely on automatic aid and mutual aid from the districts surrounding you, but that defeats the purpose of having your own fire district if you're relying on someone else to come in and provide the service.
But we're relying on it right now.
Through this contract, yes.
So let's extend the contract for a single year and we can get our act together.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Scotts Valley Fire has been extending it since 2016.
So 1 more year.
Well, their board has decided we are not going to continue because we're subsidizing. That's the issue. They're subsidizing the service to the community, and it's unfair for you because most of the residents weren't aware that this was even happening, and that's why we're putting the spotlight now because LAFCO, and I'm concerned of this uncertainty. Yes.
I think you can clarify this really easily. Most people, and I didn't know this, now I know. If there's one firefighter on duty, and maybe Chief Whittle needs to get up and explain about response times, but take this fact first. With one firefighter on duty, the engine arrives at your burning house. That engine from Branciforte Fire, if we're in the middle of the district where they can respond faster, and they can't in the upper and lower part than Scotts Valley or Central can. In the middle part of the district where the Branciforte engine shows up, your house is on fire, what happens? They can't go in your house. They cannot go in your house until a second engine arrives. So if you want to talk about response time, then let's get it ironed out what exactly response time is. It's not how fast the first engine gets there when you're running a fire department with one person on duty.
It is for an EMT.
It is for an EMT, but that's exactly what we do. We get out the details here of what we're talking about. So, for Upper Branciforte and for Ryder Ridge and those places, my understanding is Scotts Valley can respond faster, and they have 3 people in an engine, which means they can go into your house. The bottom of Branciforte, my understanding is Central can get there faster and has 3 guys or 2 on an engine go to your house. In the middle, there's the question: what is the data, and how do we solve the problem? So, you're jumping on Joe here, but he's not the right guy to answer some of these questions. Let's get some facts on how many minutes it takes to get to these different places. And let's get the facts on how many minutes it takes to get someone who can actually break down the door safely and get a internal fire out, a structure fire out. So until we have those facts, there's no point in throwing stuff at Joe because that's not the
and I appreciate the energy and the concerns of the residents, because this is your lives, this is your homes, this is your community. So you have all the right to feel defensive and say, no, you're wrong. I could completely agree with you. I'm here to help you. I want to make sure that when you call 911, someone shows up as quickly as possible. That's the reason why I'm here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it comes down to the Scotts Valley agreement fell apart financially because, they're subsidizing it. Is there a number for how much more? I mean, and is that less than the 3 times as much?
So I would have to defer to the fire chief, and I'm not sure if you can speak on. I can't speak on behalf of Scotts Valley Fire and why they decided not to extend the contract for another year.
There was a mention of subsidizing.
Who's subsidizing?
Right. So I use the word subsidized, meaning having another district coming in and providing services within your community. This is the only situation where that happens. When there's a fire, when there's a water district and they run out of water, and they ask a neighboring water provider to provide services to the residents, that doesn't happen. That water district just shuts down and someone else takes over. So, but this is a unique situation with fire districts. They have mutual aid, they have automatic aid. So if no one can show up, someone else is going to show up because that's a health and safety issue. So that's why they're always coming in. But they're at the point where they're coming in more and more without getting the reciprocity from Branciforte Fire. Yes, sir.
I was a little confused. I think Pat O'Connell had said that Scotts Valley wasn't willing to merge, but you're saying that in this 2-step process or whatever, you would foresee a merger taking place. Is that correct?
LAFCO supports a reorganization, a merger. That's the reason why there was this combined sphere back in 1994. That's the reason why this contract has been going on for 6 years, because it made sense. They've been working together for so long. Now there's some conditions, some requirements that both sides want to have, and that's where LAFCO comes in as the third party and see, can we meet in the middle? Can we get a consensus? And I think with the two districts working together, but more importantly, with the residents understanding the situation, answering your questions, getting your buy-in, getting your feedback, merger can make sense, but it's not going to happen overnight. This is going to be a multi-year process because we need to have additional conversations with the residents in the districts. But LAFCO is in support of that. Yes, ma'am.
Joe, I really appreciate LAFCO coming in and taking a look at this. From what I understand, that's going to be a really good movement. But just for clarity, September 30th, the contract ends. Who is driving the next steps? Is LAFCO? What's going to happen next? How do we find out what to do next?
So,
Community meetings?
great question. And one of the reasons why I'm here is because we're July 28th and there's nothing in place. And it's very difficult to hire a brand new staff, a fire chief, within a year, let alone less than 2 months. So who's driving the force? Branciforte Fire, Scotts Valley Fire, there are the two affected parties. LAFCO's here just for assistance. I want to make it clear that LAFCO's not here to force anything to happen. That's contrary to what I'm here for. But yes, the Branciforte Fire is the one who determines what's going to happen for the future after September 30th.
The board or the firefighters?
The board.
So it would seem that the logical thing is the money will go to Scotts Valley and the board will be out of work on September 2nd. Because, I mean, if nothing else happens, the board doesn't have enough money and the money has to go somewhere and Scotts Valley is the place it will go. Is that true?
That's to be determined.
Well, remember, the board cannot be voted on because they seem to have terms for at least 2 or 3 or 4 years. So you can't vote new board members in,
Right.
because they're already there.
So you raise a good point. If the residents are interested or in support of a boundary change, a change of organization, let's say just hypothetically, the residents want to merge with Scotts Valley Fire. The residents can also initiate that boundary change. They can submit an application to merge. Another way of typically, the affected district is the one who initiates it.
You mean registered voters?
Great question. So registered voters or landowners can initiate a change of organization.
So can landowners vote?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways that landowners and registered voters can initiate. They submit a petition, and you need at least 25% of interest to get the ball rolling. And then when we go through the LAFCO process, there is an opportunity for the registered voters and landowners to actually vote on it, to say, yes, I want this merger to happen, or no, I do not. So there is an opportunity in the LAFCO process. Yes, sir.
I had 2 questions, and they might be more for the fire chiefs, but for Pat, is there a board meeting coming up for Branciforte that residents can go to, or how do we get in contact with the board?
Are there board members here who could raise their hand? No, we know you think.
So I'll defer to the fire chief because I know he may have some comments, and then defer back to Pat. But I just wanted to provide LAFCO's perspective. I'd be more than happy to answer more of your questions if you have during Q&A or after this meeting, because I'm sure a lot of people have questions and they want clarifications.
Well, you said you wanted to show your report, so when's that going to happen?
Great question. So I am currently finalizing that report. I'm providing a draft version of that report to all the fire districts, their staff, so they can provide feedback and ensure my information and findings are accurate. So when is the public going to see it? So that final version is going to be publicized in October, the first week of October. I was not in charge of the contract sunsetting in September, but that's when the commission said that this report needs to be submitted in October.
You're asking for solution first, data second. That's the wrong way to do it. You should have data first, solution second.
Well, no, you raise a great question. So the report's coming out in October, but I'm here today because I know that September 30th is around the corner. So LAFCO wants to help now. I don't want to wait in October. I don't want to wait 5 years from now. The issue is happening. So what can LAFCO do? And Pat touched on it of an ESA. So what I'm suggesting is another form of a contract saying Scotts Valley Fire, continue providing the services you're already doing to Branciforte Fire, but with a caveat. You establish this contract, but within a year or two, you need to officially merge.
So just to be clear, financially, you've got a certain number of folks here, a certain number of folks at Scotts Valley right now. Scotts Valley is covering because there's shortages, just like firefighters travel all over when there's a need, right?
Correct.
Under this contract. Once the merger happened, there would be a couple of folks here, a couple of folks there, covering as needed when there's an emergency. And it would be the same roughly number of people, the same level of service. What's the savings? Why are we merging versus having a contract? It's the same thing, right?
Yes, but there is no ambiguity that this contract's going to end in a year or two.
But we're not closing the station down. We're not firing the firefighters.
Sounds like they're closing.
No, but I just heard that we're not. That's not part of the plan. We're not closing the station down. We're not.
Well, I think he's gonna close the station, people there, but it's still like.
So this is a question I've been hearing a lot. This fire station is going to close after this merger.
No, but so let me clarify, because I heard you say we're not closing it, and I think everybody else thinks we are. So I'm just.
So this is something that the two districts need to agree upon. What we're going to do with this fire station. What I'm suggesting, and this is just a suggestion to the two district, is housing the volunteer firefighters in that fire station. So you have your volunteers there, or repurpose it and use it as a headquarters for the community, for keeping the fire station open. That's what I'm suggesting, and having your volunteers there.
No paid staff.
So that's something that needs to be analyzed. I don't have the answer to see if is it going to be a paid staff, is it going to be anything else. I don't have the answer for.
It seems Scotts Valley has the power at the moment, so they would argue easily to shut the damn station down because they get here in 10 minutes anyway, and who cares? House burns a little bit longer. So I don't see how there's anybody except Scotts Valley who's in the driver's seat. On the other hand, this is a rather rich community, because all California is a rich community, and there are. I don't think it's ever been told to people that for $4,000 we'll have somebody here who will probably try to 10 minutes earlier to keep your house from burning down if they can. So that information, I think, is a surprise to most of these people.
To the community that taxes should have, like, there should have been an option, and it should have been stated long before it has gone to us.
All the people that went home today don't know this.
I mean,
and that's another issue of the.
Look at the community. 10 minutes is a huge difference when you live here, not when you live in Scotts Valley in Sky Park. Here,
Right.
10 minutes is life or death.
Right.
Here, we need that station man. So I don't think anybody here would oppose our taxes going up to make sure we have the appropriate staff. But that was not brought to our attention. It has not been asked of us.
That's right.
So why is that not even in the forefront of an option before cutting us out of the picture and having us have that option to begin with? I mean, I think we'd all be happy.
Could LAFCO suggest that we consider an increased assessment in this 700-person district?
Well, that could definitely be a suggestion in my report. Definitely. And again, that's another reason why I'm here, is because I want to get the feedback from the residents. If it sounds like merger is not on the table right now at this meeting,
I don't know.
but we need to have more meetings and more discussions. But yes, I want to include as much options as possible.
We need the report before you ask the question.
You have to spell out what Scotts Valley is going to do. That's what it's vague right now. You're all talking vague. There's no concrete details.
And
Scotts Valley hasn't said 100% like, oh yeah, we'll do the merger if you give us X. It sounds to me like Scotts Valley is upset because they're not getting
something.
pay by taxes for the services that they're providing. Totally understand that. So how can we merge the two districts or support our own district appropriately with finances, etc.? So what do we need to do? The board hasn't said anything. She's right. Like, nobody's heard a word about this until now, and now we got 2 months to decide.
Right.
I mean, that's,
I agree with you. I agree with you.
and no offense, but like your report's going to come out after the 30th. So, you know, I want to hear from the chiefs. I want to hear what their plan is, what their recommendations are. 'Cause we're not hearing anything. Like, so can they stand up?
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that you're here.
Thank
but
you.
I want to hear from the chiefs.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, I'm Ron. I'm Fire Chief, Scotts Valley and Branciforte Fire. I know there's a lot of questions. I know, actually, this gentleman, you had another question. You didn't get your second question out, did you?
No, I didn't. I was just wondering what's going to happen with the Branciforte staff, the current staff.
Paid staff.
Yeah.
Are they still going to be demoted, or what's the
So we don't even know where Branciforte is going yet, but all that stuff is negotiable. First, I want to clarify a few things. The contract did go into effect 6 years ago. We came in through a management contract at Branciforte. We began paying the bills, managing the budget, managing the folks, the fire station remodel, everything that involves managing a fire station. We manage our own department as well. So we have limited staff in our admin office, and they're paying all of our bills, doing our payroll, doing our PERS audits, our healthcare, our human resources, all that stuff. We're not a city, so we don't have those resources. We do it all in-house. And we're doing Branciforte's. So we doubled our workload. We didn't double our staff. We're happy to do it for the 18 months to 2 years to get Branciforte back on its feet. Fast forward 6 years, we're still doing it. We're still doing the work. We're still doing double the workload on our staff. And our board decided, actually a couple of years ago, they kind of started the ball rolling and maybe try and find a chief, find a battalion chief to put in training and eventually take over. That didn't work. So here we are today. And actually, when I took over as the fire chief back in November, I've actually been in Scotts Valley for 36 years, so I'm not new to the area. I've been involved in the other consolidation talks. But when I took over, the board said, we need to wrap this up. This has gone on a long time. They've got a lot of feedback from the battalion chiefs, the firefighters, and the admin staff about the workload that it takes to manage the 3-person department. It's double the workload. So that's the admin part of it and the board part of it. There's a lot of work there. The second part of it is we also respond to all the calls now. Since we took over, we send an engine and a battalion chief to almost all the calls because there's one person on duty. The industry standard is 3 people on a fire engine, not 1. 1 person on a fire engine is dangerous. It is not safe. We will not send 1 person on a fire engine by themselves to a call ever. It's not safe for the firefighter. It's not safe for the public. And Scotts Valley doesn't operate that way. So therefore, that's one of the reasons that we want, we're putting into this. When I was at BC, excuse me, we would respond as a BC. When I knew that firefighter was working by himself and he would get a medical, a wires, any kind of call, we would respond from there to help him out. Because if you can imagine backing a fire truck down a Conservancy loop in the middle of a pouring down rainstorm in pitch dark, that's a dangerous operation by himself. And we didn't want anything to happen to him. So we would respond as a BC to help that person out because there's, half the time there's 1 person there. Sometimes they have a volunteer. The volunteers are good that we have. But that brings me to the next point is that volunteers are hard to come by. Pat mentioned it. There's not a lot of, the requirements have gone up for volunteers. It's not like the old days when anybody could come in, be a volunteer. Here's some turnouts. Here's a pager, show up and, we'll have a good time putting out the fires. It's not like that anymore. The requirements are such that we just can't take on any volunteer. There's a lot of liability, a lot of health and safety stuff they have to go through. So that's part of the reasons why we terminated this agreement. We gave the Branciforte board notice on March 11th. So they've known since March 11th that they're going to need to do something. and they've been meeting periodically to come up with a solution. In terms of the full consolidation, again, we met with the board back in December, and we said, made a proposal for a consolidation. However, this station we couldn't guarantee to staff it. You know, we have Scotts Valley has volunteers, Branciforte has volunteers. We could keep it as a volunteer station, but honestly, all the Branciforte volunteers don't even live in the district. So if it's a volunteer station, they're responding from home to pick up an engine, Scotts Valley, we would still beat them over here. So we couldn't guarantee that we could staff this station. We won't do it with one person. We wouldn't be happy about doing it with two, but we could probably work something out. So that's just not on in the cards for Scotts Valley to merge at this time and keep that operating with one person. It's not safe, and we're not going to do it. So that's. Hope that answers some of your questions about the staffing, the one person, and yes.
What do you need to be able to do?
Yeah.
What's that?
What do you need to be able to staff it? What's needed?
Money.
At least, yeah, money, really. I mean, we two people per shift. You know, you guys have 700 parcels. As we figured out, right? About 700 parcels. It would probably be another $1,000 per year per parcel. In your property taxes. We'll bring in another 700,000, add to the 800 and something that's recurring now, about $1.5 million, could staff it with two people full time.
But not counting admin costs. Just
No, but see, right. Our admin costs, by adding 3 people to our payroll, isn't as bad as what we have to do now, where we're paying those 3 people in a completely different payroll system, different billing system, different accounts payable. They have different insurance. It's all different. If we brought them into Scotts Valley, the admin costs would be minimal because we're already doing it for our guys. So we're just adding 3 more people essentially, or hiring 3 more. So you're adding 6.
Why couldn't you have this be a satellite from Scotts Valley?
Have what?
Have it be a satellite station from Scotts Valley.
We don't have the people to put there. If we don't have the bodies to put there, I mean, it could be, but it wouldn't be staffed, right? It could be a volunteer station like these guys mentioned. We don't have the money. If the residents were to pass another special tax similar to Measure T, that again about $1,000 per parcel per year would raise about $700,000. You add that to the current budget, bring it close to $1.5 million. That could staff that station with 2 people per shift.
So would you be interested in that? Would you propose to your board that be a reasonable deal?
I think the board would be open to that. Okay. The board isn't opposed to looking at consolidation. It's just continuing under our current model is no longer an option.
This is the Scotts Valley Board.
Scotts Valley, correct.
And how much more would it cost to have the Branciforte have an admin here? How much more would it have to be to have a fully functional separate?
Well, it depends on your level of service. If the board is right now working on using one of the 3 guys as a fire chief, which is a good option, and then hiring a part-time administrative person, and they can afford that under their budget now.
Right, that's not interesting. You just said it's not safe. So if they had 2 firefighters, one maybe being a chief, I don't know how that works, and an administrative person, what would the cost be for that?
that was the Cal Fire deal, it was like 300, like, yeah.
So would that be $1,000 more per parcel plus 500?
Plus admin cost?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to figure in another person there, so... Yeah, sorry, I tripped myself. Yeah, you might go $1,500 per person, per parcel.
Okay, so supposing that happened, would Scotts Valley feel that they were getting a raw deal by backing up the Branciforte station?
No, we don't think we're getting a raw deal on anything.
They backed up anyway.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like there's a little bit of a false, like, oh, well, right now
No,
they
now
have to back them up.
they're not backing. Right now they're not backing up. Right now they're in charge of it. They're doing everything. So they're not.
We're responding to every call.
I would like to hear from
So-
Lucy on some of this. Aren't you at the station? So what are your thoughts?
Well, before I hand it over to Nick, is there any other questions for me? talked about the tax increase, the staffing, admin support. As far as the mutual aid goes, Branciforte, and this is throughout the past, is the neighboring agencies, Scotts Valley, Santa Cruz, and Central, supplement Branciforte on all, structure fires, vehicle accidents, those types of things. That's not going to stop. We're still going to respond. It'll be less. We're not going to respond to medicals. You'll still get the one guy on the medical. You're not going to get paramedics, which, again, if we were to annex and respond from Glenwood and Erba, you'd get an engine company with 3 or 4 people on it that are paramedics. They can perform rescues, perform vehicle extrication, do all those things, as opposed to having one person. Those are the differences.
Well, let me ask one more question. Why do you want Branciforte? Why do you want to have that part of Scotts Valley?
We don't. We're not the ones pushing this. I'm not advocating for this. I'm not offering my opinion. I'm just giving you the facts based on where we've been in the last 6 years. Our board isn't advocating for this at all. Our board told me, we're done with this. Now, they might be open to it if it was cost neutral, but they certainly don't want to jeopardize the level of service in Scotts Valley by all of a sudden we're taking on Branciforte and now we can't respond to our own calls, right? So they're watching out for their district as well. It's not us doing that. Anyway, one question back here.
Probably not for you, maybe Joe. In your LAFCO business model, how is this going to affect our insurance rates when they know that now instead of having a firehouse that's staffed, X number of miles, it's now coming X number of miles away farther? Because I think that's more of an affair for people that now our fire insurance rates are going to go up or are going to get canceled.
Yeah.
Because your response time, you're spoken some bad shit. You do not know what it's like coming up 17 on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, beach traffic, what going home traffic like coming down Vine Hill. That would be my biggest worry is my fire insurance is going to go through the roof.
Yes.
It'll be non-existent because we don't have a firehouse.
And that's why people will pay more.
So in New York, are going to say, "Oh, this is now 3 miles too far." Whoop, that's it. And $1,000 property tax is going to be nothing.
You made a good point, but nowadays insurance companies are canceling people who have a fire hydrant right in front of their house. My neighbor just got canceled. He's got a hydrant literally in his front yard, canceled.
The reality is that we don't have enough time to have an election so that we can pay this extra amount of money.
Well, yeah, but there are some short-term solutions, right? The board's working on stuff for short-term solutions, and so
Which board are we talking about?
Branciforte,
Okay.
your board.
They have
Too bad we don't have a board member here. They got two. Oh,
Pat's here.
that's here. Oh, I'd like to hear from
Tim's here. Chris, you had a question?
Yeah, so what I hear is there's a lot of interest in residents in coming up with discussion at a detailed level so that there's facts in front of us. So yeah, Vine Hill Road is busy on certain times, but as far as I know, Scotts Valley Fire has data that shows what response times are, including on the calls they make into Branciforte. There's data there. There's data that can be generated. But what we're missing is, and we have for years and years in this district, is citizen involvement in our fire district. And this board has been stuck with no one paying attention. We haven't paid attention. We're the ones that have put ourselves into the hole here. So we have now a couple of months before there's a divorce. We have the ability to sit down and have discussions just like we're having in a much more structured way where we do have data and we can start to talk about this in a much more comprehensive way and tell the board what our ideas are. So I'm going to ask Chief Whittle, will you support from Scotts Valley Fire a series of public meetings over the next month or two in which we put together this data and we present it in an organized format so that residents like us who do show up will show up, but we'll also drag our other neighbors down and say, we've created a mess here by not helping out our own district, and now we're complaining? Forget it. let's get together and start meeting. So Chief Whittle, will you, as from Scotts Valley Fire, support that type of program over the next couple months? And I'll ask the same question of Joe, and I'll ask the same question of our board. Will you support a public series of sessions to get enough input that we can come up with a plan, alternate plans that we can then possibly vote on in some type of referendum in the near future?
So I work for the pleasure of the Branciforte board, and if they so choose to do that and ask me to assist them with that, I would. But again, that's not my call. I work for the Branciforte board.
Will Scotts Valley Fire Department participate in that type of thing?
Yeah, to what extent I needed to provide any data or information. I mean, the call data you're talking about, the response time stuff it's available from our dispatch center. I mean, it's not drive times we're making up. I haven't looked at the exact response times from Scotts Valley over here. We have done just normal drive time studies where we left each station at the same time, and it took 12 minutes, and we met right at Santa Vita, just going over Granite Creek, down Glen Canyon, just driving normal, not code 3. So
can we have, let's say we have 4 or 5 public meetings every 2 weeks, and that go on possibly for 3-4 hours at a pop, where we actually produce things at the end. Are you willing, from Scotts Valley, not from Branciforte, to give Scotts Valley's answer to questions in those meetings and to give us ideas about, yes, Scotts Valley might accept that, might not? Is there someone from Scotts Valley, not just Branciforte, who can sit in these meetings and work with us so that we can answer?
Well, I think the first step is for the Branciforte board and your constituents to figure out what you want to do. You got to figure out what you want to do, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions on Scotts Valley's behalf.
Can we hear from the local person again?
Absolutely. The LAFCO, who do you want to hear from?
No, you wanted to hear from the Branciforte leader.
The head of the board, are you going to drive and call for meetings? Like the type of meetings that Chris is suggesting?
Yes.
When?
So here's some of the things that I've heard tonight, and I think I probably wasn't very clear on some issues here, but we have a people in place that we can have a chief, we can have an administrative person, and we can function should this agreement go away on September 1st. We should be able to function for at least a year, which would give us time to have those meetings, would give us time to come up with a solution and work with Scotts Valley and see if we can come up with a solution. Because in the long run, a lot of the things that he said is true about, the safety of firefighters on calls for structure fires. Not all our fires are structure fires, and anyway, what I think we can do is that we can go forward. I'm ready to have a special meeting next week with our board to put the people in place that I'm talking about putting in place that will be able to help us run the station. We'll be able to start having public meetings. Our board meetings have been open, and people have been attending them and listening to what we have had to say. But
are they posted online? Can we see
yes.
when the next meeting is? Just
yes,
Google
it's all online.
Fire, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Is it on Zoom or?
The meetings have been on Zoom, and because of the size of the potential meetings, it's just easier to do that right now.
Yeah, so there's a Zoom meeting in 1 week that we could attend if we want?
Yes, if I got to get the board to agree, which is easy, I'm pretty sure.
So where is the information about that meeting posted?
It will be posted on
the website.
They're all posted at the station, but it's going to be on the website for the Branciforte Fire. So anyway, I know everybody is getting tired and ready to go.
So is the Branciforte recommending that we hire a battalion chief and maybe I got that term wrong, sorry.
Well,
And an admin and
a chief and an admin person, yes.
continue, like make
Yes.
come up with a temporary continuance with Scotts Valley for a year while you
No,
probably put something on our
on September 30th.
to get more money.
No, on September 30th, what we would do is we would take over the bill paying, the administrative functions. We would be our own district. We wouldn't. We pay $104,000 this year for the Scotts Valley to do that. So it's not that they're not giving money, but by not having to give them that much money will help us be able to do that.
So I think everybody kind of freaked out that like come September 30th, our fire station goes away. Is that the case? Or
No, we're doing everything we can to not do that.
We have a year, you have funds to run the station for a year post September 30th.
Yes, we have a budget for the entire year.
Okay, so that
Is
is
that as a
a year.
one man
Yep.
on a truck?
That is one person on the truck at this point in time.
Told that that's not good enough.
But that's the thing that I said we need to work on is to get the volunteers.
We need to work on it immediately, not a month. Now, it seems one thing that the guy said, it's insane that you have two small number of employees with different things so that a single person can't pay the payroll for both because you have different payrolls. You should have been looking to make simplifications because you have the same thing, both of them pretty tiny groups. They should certainly not have two separate payroll systems, and then you have to do both. So there are things that you've been, I don't know how you haven't been doing that, but it sounds like immediately that should be possible.
We will be doing our own payroll in our own system.
But if you are, that means that you're half as efficient because they could do it with a small amount of additional work. What the guy said is they're having to do double work because the things are different. It's not hard to add 4 employees to an existing system with 5, but
They have to do the full merger to do that,
why?
because they're not employees of the same organization.
Well, why? But they can have the same.
Daily tree.
Yeah.
Daily tree.
Yeah, but you certainly could easily do that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, you're going to send one guy out. Anyway, it does seem that thinking of that sort, so that the guy from Scotts Valley doesn't complain that he has to do double work, there's got to be a way that you could, since you've been effectively merged, it's certainly, you're not making the benefit of the merger. So that's a problem.
Yes.
I don't know, I don't do what you do, I don't wanna insult, like, you're, you know, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, I'm not gonna say you're acting like I do, but, I mean, if you're just doing payroll for a handful of people, is it that much work to be doing that?
I think talking about that is, all of this is kind of in the weeds about the whole, overlooking the whole structure of how these two districts work.
Yeah.
You can nitpick payroll or a job or administration, but the bottom line is, there's not enough people to run this district with one person on duty unless we come up with extra money to get more people and pay for it, or we work with Scotts Valley. Come up with
But the idea is coming up with the extra money. I think I'm hearing a consensus here that we would be willing to consider.
But you're going to need a consultant that says, how do I get it at the voters as quickly as possible?
Can you tell me when our district first got word that Scotts Valley was going to, end their
March.
So that was in March?
Yep.
Okay.
And did you send out letters saying this is awful, let's talk about it? Or come to our meetings? You, of course not, you didn't.
The simple thing is, we pay more money or the station goes away.
Yes.
That's simple.
That's true.
If we had a year, and that was really what we wanted to do, we might be able to pull it off.
Right.
Yeah, but
Otherwise,
I think
barely. A year's
Clarify
hard
one
to
thing.
get a special
Branciforte
election.
has a decent budget. Okay, Branciforte, before we took over, operated with 3 people on duty. What we're talking about, and Pat was a volunteer chief. Prior to Pat being the volunteer chief, they had 3 people on duty. One was the fire chief, and on his days off, he did the fire chief's work. Okay, so that's the model that has been in place in Branciforte. Well, since 36 years that I've been in Scotts Valley, that's the model that's been in place. That model, Branciforte can go back to, and that's what Pat's talking about. Going back to a model where you've got 3 people on duty, 1 per person, where you have 3 people on duty. One of them would be the fire chief, and on his days off, he does all the administrative work, or they hire a part-time person to do administration. It's the level of service, as we talked about level of service, that Branciforte has had since its inception, or well, again, for quite a while, is the 1 person on duty. Nothing's changed. Come October 1st, it will go back to that. You're not going to lose your fire protection. You're not going to lose your 1 person in the fire station. The board will have somebody in place to be able to pay the bills, the payroll, the HR, the healthcare, all the things that go along with that. They'll have somebody in place. And one of the 3 people there will probably be promoted to a fire chief, either long-term or interim. So you're not losing what you already have. The discussion revolves around your level of service of the 1 person. If you're happy with 1 person responding to the calls to do CPR by himself, or to try and get somebody out of a red car by himself, or do all those things by himself, that's a level of service you've had and you've been accustomed to. Yeah. Now, a tax increase could help boost their staffing to 2 people a day, which would be great. And they could still have their own fire chief and their own admin if they choose to do that, but it also makes them more attractive for a consolidating agency such as Scotts Valley, CAL FIRE, or Central to consolidate, because now they're self-sufficient with a CAL FIRE chief said, there's no way I could do this, because what you guys do administratively, I couldn't touch it for that amount of money. That CAL FIRE, a big state organization, couldn't even look at it. So a tax increase would help, but again, you're not going to lose your 1 person on duty, which is what you've had all along. So you're not going to lose that. It's going to continue. The payroll stuff you mentioned, it's more than just doing the payroll for help people. I know it's a countywide system, and there's all kinds of things that go into that. So it's a lot of extra work doing twice, right?
So,
Opposed to just doing it with one system.
Would you still supplement, even say we do a tax increase, we get 2 people over there, but there's 2 things happening at once and we only have 1 engine? I mean, are you still able
Of course.
You're still going to supplement.
Yeah, the countywide fire service is all mutual aid. So when the tones go off for a fire in Branciforte, you get the 1 Branciforte engine, you get 2 engines from Scotts Valley, and an engine from Central, and an engine from Santa Cruz coming here, because there's a law, it's called 2 and 2 out law. A firefighter can't go into a burning building unless he has another person with him and 2 people outside the building. That's a law. So 1 person isn't going to do that on the fire. So the action starts when Scotts Valley, Central, or Santa Cruz show up. That's not going to stop. We won't be coming to medical calls. So, a medical call, if Scotts Valley shows up on an engine, you're going to have 4 paramedics, 3 or 4 paramedics who can do advanced life-saving skills. On the Branciforte, you'll have an EMT by himself, or maybe hopefully with another volunteer. That's the difference in the level of service. Well, it would be nice, but the other thing you have to look at is the call volume to support paramedic service. Paramedic service is expensive. Adding paramedics make more money. The service is more expensive, and with the call volume, Branciforte started with a Type 2 paramedic program years ago when we first went medic, because they had some volunteers who were paramedics for other agencies. It's just hard to sustain that program with volunteers, but if you were to hire paramedics with this next, if you guys got a tax increase, you hire 3 paramedics, 1 for each shift, then you can implement a paramedic program. If you look at the amount of calls Branciforte runs every year, which is last year was 146 calls, 60 of which were medical calls. The rest are smoke checks, wires down, tree calls, those types of things. So when you look at the call volume compared to Scotts Valley runs 2,000 calls a year, or even some of the other volunteer agencies that are running 700 or 800 calls a year, it's hard to justify for us spending money putting people there for 60 code 3 calls a year.
And that's why the data, I think, is important to everybody, is to know
Absolutely.
how many calls are you running weekly, how many are you?
Is it enough to have 2
Well, and again, that's up to the board and the residents to determine your level of service, right? I mean, that if you want to pay for that, then that's up to the residents. If you want to pay extra in your taxes to put a second person in there for that amount of calls, then that's something that should be considered. Absolutely.
Residents need data before they make their decisions. We can't make decisions.
They need to be asked at
Right.
least. Yeah, they've not been asked.
Will the calls be in the report? The call report will be in Joe's report? Great, great, thank you.
So anyway, yes.
So along with the data, I'm getting a little bit confused about the various concepts of how all this could be handled. And if we had it kind of in a chart or some kind of
option
itemization,
A, option B.
option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, with and without Scott Valley, I don't know.
What we get for how much money and,
Yeah, the board could put that together for you as a proposal is to determine the cost it would be to add one more person to each shift. So add 3 more people, the personnel costs. And if one of those people were the chief, would save some money, and then you add an admin person. We can certainly cost that out and run that out to the folks to see if that's an option.
But also to see the concepts that you have for solving it and what it would mean at the end point, those of us out here, and what kind of service we could expect. So with this option, that option.
That's a good point.
Along with cost.
And we'll let the board address those issues. The other thing that Scotts Valley brought to the table for the last few years has been the prevention. You heard Craig Vandervoort talk. Craig's done a lot of work out here with the folks, Ryder Ridge, Jarvis Road. He's gone out and done a ton of those LE 100 inspections. He does all the plan checks for Branciforte, all the inspections. Greg's been doing all that. So that's another aspect of stuff that's going to transition back to Branciforte that we won't be doing anymore as well. So just another added service that we've provided that will be going away. Anything else for me? Or I can turn it back over to Pat.
Just quickly, Chief Whittle, do you think that it's possible to have a reasonable amount of data by this meeting that Pat's talking about? Or is that pushing it too fast? How much of this kind of option A and B and dollars attachment could we have by the board meeting that Pat O'Connell was talking about?
It's going to take some while to put together some of that stuff. I know Joe probably has a lot of it from his report. The call data, it's not hard to get from our dispatch center, but it does take time in terms of amount of calls, response times, and it really depends on the data you want or what the board wants.
So you have a draft from Joe coming shortly. Could we ask the board to please let us see the draft now rather than waiting till October so that we do have some data to look at? And knowing that perhaps it's going to be modified by the board or Scotts Valley, but we've got the data, it's sitting there, at least the LAFCO data. Let's take a look and let's start getting these public meetings going so we can start analyzing it. We got a lot of smart people here, lots of people with business and finance and accounting experience. Let's get on it and solve the problem instead of waiting any longer. Let's move. Thank you.
What I think we can do is get our temporary solution in place with running the district, taking over as needed, but we'll get this information here shortly, but there's a lot of information that you're asking for, so I think the steps we'll take, we'll have a meeting.
I just want to say thank you, Joe and Ron and all for helping B40 all these years, and now with this transition, however it comes out, I think the help is needed, and really appreciate the mutual aid and the planning that you are doing to help us out. And you too, Pat. Thank you.
thank you for hanging in there. I know it ran a little long. It's getting dark and cold, and I know my stomach's growling, but it is important that you are here to hear the presentation. So again, thank you on behalf of the department. That's all right. I really have. Just keep your eyes and ears peeled of the next board meeting. Tune in if you can. Ask some good questions. The future is in your hands and our hands. One thing I can promise you, though, and I know I can speak for the other two full-time captains, the level of service that we provide will not change regardless if we're working alone or if we have someone working with us. We'll always respond to your calls, and we'll do the very best we can in a safe and efficient manner. So hopefully you can rest assured that we're doing the best we can for you. Okay?
We'd also like to hear what you guys would like.
People. A second set of eyes and hands would be awesome. But I get it.
So Marilyn and I were just thinking that, you know, even if you don't have to have all the data. But if you take over concepts, you all have
Let me just wrap this up and then I'll be available. That concludes tonight's presentation. I will stay around. Ask me questions if you'd like. I'm here. Again, thank you. Sorry I ran late. And we'll see and talk to you soon.